Basin Groundwater Management Agency on December 5th at 3 o'clock. Call the roll.
Director Daddy?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Filkey?
Yes.
Chair Hages?
Yes. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Okay, we have board members' announcements. Peter,
Nothing?
Jim, Bob,
Nothing from community facilities.
nothing from Casillas. General manager comments.
Good afternoon. I do have a few things that I want to give you an update on. I handed out copies for you of our newly revised quarterly extraction statements. When they've been coming in since the last update, people have still been confused about them and how to fill them out. So with the funds that you guys authorized for the Access Database Consultant, she helped us revamp the form a little bit. So I want to point out a few things. At the top, there you can see there's a big blank spot. I can put a customized message in there each quarter just to give people information. For example, when we send these out at the last couple weeks in December, I'll put a message that the groundwater sustainability plan fee went up from $75 to $100 per acre foot effective October 1st. And, you know, something along the lines, if you have any issues filling out your extraction statement, please call our office and, you know, for assistance. It's also been customized depending on the type of well use it is. You can see what I highlighted. So the first one on top is a domestic well that has a meter. And you can see in step 2, it'll show what their previous meter reading is. They enter that, and then they do their math and calculate their acre feet. Then there's in big bold, there's a yes/no flow chart. If their acre feet in step 2 is less than 0.5 acre feet, they use the left-hand side. If it's more than that, they use the right-hand side. So hopefully that'll be clearer for people. Then the other exclamation point section down below is if they're domestic and they have.
Hold on.
Yes.
On the. Why don't we just put the, why doesn't the total go in on the yes part?
Because I don't know yet. I need them to fill out their meter reading. So if they fill out their meter reading on step 2, they go across and it gets to acre feet.
Correct.
If it's less than 0.5 acre feet, I see what you're saying, put the 1250 there, because I
Right.
don't know which way they're gonna go yet.
But anybody that goes to yes is 1250 there.
Yes, but I don't know if they're gonna go to yes. I don't wanna put it there, and I feel like that would be confusing to people if it's already filled in. And Cece's nodding her head that it would be. Then they might wanna add the 1250 when they don't have to, or just use the 1250 when they shouldn't be.
Okay, all right.
So they have to make that decision and do that basic math. Then, again, if it's a domestic or landscape user, the exclamation point says if it's 0.5 or less, they can cross out the groundwater sustainability plan fee because it's not applicable to them. So we have to wait and see what they calculate in step 3 to determine if step 5 applies to them or not. Because some domestic users could use more than 0.5. It rarely happens, but it could still happen. Then the second example, if you flip over, is for a domestic meter that doesn't have a meter. You can see that the has a meter is not checked in or checked off. So then step 2 uses the calculation based on the irrigated acres and the number of dwelling units. And then they go through the same exercise, the yes or no, and then whether the groundwater sustainability plan fee applies or not. I'm hoping this kind of approach is a little easier to follow. It seems like with the kind of issues that we were having is we rearrange things. You can see that the recordation fee and the wellhead fee are down at the bottom now because sometimes people would forget to pay those because they were up at the top and they didn't add them all the way down. So now they're a little more obvious where they are. Then the final example is an agricultural meter or an agricultural well that has a meter. This also applies, go ahead.
Sorry. On the, thank you, sorry, I forget. On the 1.7 irrigation factor for citrus, since this is now done quarterly, I think that was probably taken off of the old one that was done semi-annually.
So you think it should be
I think it
halved?
should be halved, because, you know, in the neighborhood of 3 to 3.4 for citrus or avocados in Ojai
Oh,
is more in the ball. I mean, that's a good amount as it is, but, so what would that be, 6.28 acre feet
per
per
year.
acre is never, yeah, I think we've got to check that.
Okay,
I think
duly noted.
that's the semi-annual.
Hopefully, that will all go away when we get meters installed and people won't have to use those factors anymore. That's the goal.
Right. And my guess is also the 2 would become a 1.
Yeah, understood. Okay. Then, the final example was an agricultural well that has a meter. This also applies to municipal and mutual water companies. They're subject to the same fees. So again, the metered water use, step 2 is in there. The extraction charges, the yes or no for the 0.5 acre foot threshold. And then for them, for those types of users, ag, municipal, and mutual, the groundwater sustainability plan fee applies regardless of their usage, whether it's 0.5 or less. It always applies to them. So hopefully, we'll see. This is what we're planning to send out. I will check, Jim, on that irrigation
So
factor.
then, don't you need the 75 in there?
Yeah, don't pay,
Okay,
those will be updated. These were just samples.
okay.
It'll actually be 100 as of October 1st, the $100 per acre foot.
Okay.
Yeah. So, again, I'll put messages at the top. I can change that easily. And that's where we are on statements.
And there was one more I didn't print out, the one for,
Oh, we also have a way to filter out wells that are not within the DWR defined basin because they don't pay the groundwater sustainability plan fee. So I think there's 12, 14 of those wells, and that section on the groundwater sustainability plan fee will be zeroed out for them. So the enhancements that we've made are a direct result of having that Access database consultant with us who can do all those behind-the-scene coding to get that to appear the way it does on the statement. It's a little more customized.
Very good.
Okay. Let's see, DWR things. They have reached out to all the GSAs to schedule what they're calling listening sessions regarding SGMA. And so I signed up because I have things to say. The purpose of them is for DWR staff to ensure the proper development of funding programs and improvements to the application and reporting process for SGMA. So they're going around the state and meeting with all the groundwater sustainability agencies who are interested to basically hear them vent about the process and what kind of projects would be priorities for funding. So they can take that to the upper management and come up with some kind of a plan. I have one scheduled just with me on January 16th. And then that small GSA coalition that we're a part of has one for that group on February 15th. So if there's anything you'd like me to bring up, they're listening. Or if you want to participate, let me know and I can send you the Zoom link for that. Other Sigma things, I think I mentioned last time, DWR is working on updating the Sigma module on their website for the GSAs to self-report and upload their data. They did send me a draft of our project and management activities that are in our groundwater sustainability plan. I think there's like 18. So those will be in that module, so it'll be easy for me to go in and just update them annually. And then I do have a couple more public speaking engagements coming up. The Ojai Valley Board of Realtors on January 8th, and the Rotary Club reached out, and they're going to try to find a spot for me also in January. So I usually wear both hats when I go to those engagements, both the Casitas and OBGMA, and just talk about all the water things like the nerd that I am. And then the last piece of good news is that we were awarded a grant for that stream gauge in San Antonio Creek. Thanks to Jordan and Dudek's efforts to get us the information that we needed to apply for it. We were notified, I think Monday, that we got the $25,000 to install a stream gauge. I will need to bring a resolution to the board at the January meeting for us to participate in it. It's a grant. There's no requirement for matching funds. We do have to commit to, maintaining it, and then however long we can maintain it with that $25,000 is what we get. We also have to have a drug-free workplace policy in place.
No.
So, I'm sorry. It's a requirement of the grant. So I will bring that to the board in January also. So no dealing or using on the job. So you
You're
will
in
see.
trouble, Richard.
I'm just going to stop there. Okay, that's my update, unless you guys have questions.
Is there, on that stream gauge, is there a location that we've agreed to
Yes.
that can't be changed?
Yes. Well, we
Where
we
is the
gave them specific GPS coordinates, if that's what you want to know, and it's meant to be at the outflow of the Ojai Basin
All right.
on the creek.
So it's at the bridge?
No, it's actually just downstream of Skunk Ranch Road Bridge. The Creek Road Bridge by Camp Comfort is the jurisdictional extent of the OBGMA, but the actual basin, the alluvial portion of the basin, its limits are at the Santa Ana Road Creek Fault, where it crosses the creek, which is about 400 yards or so downstream of Skunk Ranch Road Bridge, about 4,000 feet upstream from Camp Comfort.
Okay.
I'll show a map in a minute.
Is that it, Julia?
That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Next is a basin update. Jordan, you gonna do it on Zoom or live?
Both. First, I just need to share the screen here. And now that we can see that, thank you very much. Today, in talking about the basin status reporting, came up with the term of hydrostis. It's kind of like solstice, but it's where water is just kind of still for the moment. Of course, we won't be here for the winter solstice in about 2.5 weeks or so, but you get the idea. Talking about November and December since we didn't meet last month. Year-to-date rainfall totals, this is just since October 1st, we're at 0.39 inch on the valley floor and 0.63 inch on Nordhoff Ridge to the north of us. Just getting started in the water year, so we'll see what it ends up yielding. what is the basin water levels doing? In the Key well, here's the raw hydrograph of, at the Elrod well. This is sort of in the central portion of the basin, and you can see the tail end of last year, with the nadir hitting at about this time, last year before the rain started and we started getting some recharge and even water levels rising before the big recharge, which brought water levels, up close to 100 feet over the course of the recharge season, and then the recession, as we expect every year, slowly declining to the right. And as we sit here today, we're sort of toward that asymptotic point as we are at or near the annual low water level period. On the larger scale hydrograph, with respect to time, in that well, we're at 102.7 feet as of yesterday, puts us at about 80% capacity of the basin, or 64,000 acre feet. We're about 8.5 feet deeper than we were at the nadir last year, which happened on the 15th of December, 2023. And of course, our annual high this year, mid-April 2024, the water level was 45.54 feet. So we've come down at that good, close to 60-something feet over the course of the year, from peak to today, and don't expect it to fall much more given the cooler temperatures and lower demand overall in the basin and approaching recharge. On the surface water side, this is what our budget looks like. A lot of the creeks are dry as they enter the basin. Gridley is dry. Thatcher Creek's flowing in at about 3/100ths of CFS. Reeves 4/100th of a CFS. Surface flow out, you can see this. Senior Canyon at the Ladera Bridge, 0.34 CFS is what we measured yesterday. McNell, nothing. Stewart, nothing. But on the outflow side, it's 0.39 CFS at underneath Creek Road at the Montgomery or Fox drain. Surface flow out on the main channel of San Antonio Creek was 4.14 CFS. So the inflow was 0.41 CFS in total. The surface outflow was 4.53 CFS. That's a significant amount of water that's escaping from the alluvial portion of the basin, largely from the perch system, as the water levels in the main portion of the basin are still, as you saw, over 100 feet deep in that central portion of the basin. In cross-sectional area here and multi-dimensional charting as we're doing, you can see in this is since 2017, so we're approaching 8 years of data sets here. What jumps out is the rainfall in the top gauge, where it's been high. We haven't had any significant rainfall yet this water year, so we have no spikes yet to report on the far right of that upper graph. In the main portion of the graph, elevation is on the left side, ranging from 600 feet up to 950 feet, which is basically bottom of the barrel of the basin, southern side discharge area, to some of the headwaters area. The continuous flow of San Antonio Creek across the basin is where the light blue bars fully extend the full vertical extent of this graph. And then the times at which we're able to see that flow break and then are able to map the points of where the groundwater daylights and becomes surface flow is marked by the slightly darker blue squares connected by a similarly colored line. So each year as the water continuous flow breaks, there's a point at which groundwater daylights and becomes surface flow. And we've been mapping that pretty consistently here for the past 8 years. Also on this graph are locations of where the depths to water are, or elevations in all of the wells that many of the wells we monitor, not all of them. But the Key well is in the darkest blue line. You saw a bit of the graph at one scale earlier for the past year, and you saw it for the past almost century in the preceding hydrograph. But over the past 8 years, you can see the level of detail that we have. So we're really able to pick out the peaks and the absolute lows each year. What's always interesting about this graph is that the county gauges, which are in the pinkish bars in the main portion of the graph, have not been published for the preceding water year. So we don't have their data from in CFS from San Antonio Creek near the confluence with the Ventura River at Old Creek Road Bridge. That's the light magenta bars that are present for most of this graph, but absent in the 2024 water year. In the data, daily CFS are not yet available. Another scale of that outflow graph over the past 5 years is that we tend to see, over the past 5 years, we've really seen some variability we've seen dry conditions, we've seen exceptionally dry conditions and extreme drought conditions, and we've also seen no drought conditions. And it's tough to call it normal, but if wet is normal, it's been wetter over the past couple of years. But what's interesting about this is then we were able to calculate from our monthly estimates that in those dry years, normal to abnormally dry, we still had 1,167 acre feet of outflow in 2019 to 20, 289 acre feet of outflow in 2020 to 2021, 2021 to 22, we had 556 acre feet of outflow. And then in the wet years, we had almost an order of magnitude greater than even a normal year, with close to 12,000 acre feet of outflow in 2022 to 23, and almost 16,000 acre feet of outflow in 2023 to 2024. And bear in mind, these are probably on the lower side of what is actually discharged, because the storm flows are not picked up by this. Fortunately, we'll have the stream gauge to monitor with the blessing and funding of the DWR to really put even more refinement on this and better quantification of how much flow has escaped the Ojai Basin at the basin boundary point. Here's where the graphics look like for Senior Canyon underneath Ladera Road Bridge. That's about the highest flow you see coming into the basin as of yesterday. In the lower right-hand corner of this graphic, there's a yellow camera that puts approximately in map location where this photograph was taken. And so that's what that almost 0.39 CFS looks like coming into the basin. And there may be some inflow upstream of this that's already started to percolate, because the actual point of where water stops flowing is still well downstream of this. Thatcher Creek coming in under McAndrew, we've got that barely a trickle coming under the bridge. Of course, it's dry at the Ladera Road crossing of San Antonio Creek near the confluence of Gridley and Senior Canyons. But then the groundwater daylights again. Last month it was at this location. This month it's at that location. So over the course of a month, we've seen that much change. Oh, wait a minute, that doesn't really mean much to you. Why don't we put it in this kind of graphical format? So if I take a Google Earth image and have the city of Ojai's there in much of this, but the darker blue represents the extent of the southwestern uppermost saturated zone, SWAZI, or the perched aquifer system. And you can see that between October 23rd, 2024 and December 4th, 2024, represented by those two blue pinpoints that are separated by 184 feet. That's the change in daylighting surface water location in map view from one month to the other. As it gets drier and that perch system discharges its water, that point continues to march further downstream until, of course, it's recharged, and then it quickly marches upstream. Underneath Creek Road at Montgomery or Stewart or Fox Drain, this is what you have. That's the western portion of the basin that is discharging as surface water. That's what it looked like the month before. Over in the main stem of the this was a month ago, and this is yesterday. looks a little bit more autumnal, and we have about that half a CFS decrease, but it can make a significant difference visually when looking at what that changes is like. All right, predictions for the coming 3-month period. NOAA issued this on the 21st, so it's a little outdated, 2 weeks or so. But we're looking at equal chances of average precipitation where we are. Cold and dry-ish, I would say, is what to expect. Their forecast was actually put forward also for March, April, and May 2025, and it's almost the same. Equal chances of average conditions. So if we get average precipitation this water year, I'd say we're doing pretty good. I would expect a little bit below average based on what we're seeing so far and what some of the other projections are indicating. All right, there we go. Any questions?
Questions? Okay, thank you, Jordan.
All right, thank you.
Okay, the next item is public comments, and these are comments on items that do not appear on today's agenda. So I have two speakers. Keith Nightingale.
Richard, there's 3.
Three. But what
Hi,
about this one?
I'm Keith Nightingale. I live at 1177 McGann Road, just across the street from Krishnamurti. And my issue is the letter I recently received requiring me to put in a meter. Little history behind my well. My well was drilled in 1914 at 180 feet. It was essentially abandoned from like 1921 until I came back out of the Army in 1994. It was abandoned because Senior Canyon then began to provide domestic water to our house, the family home. When I got back, I was experienced from Ojai, grew up here, beginning in the 1948 fire. So I thought it would be a good idea if I essentially reopened that well. It's got a 12-inch casing, and put in a tank just for emergency purposes, which I have done. The water is presently, there's a collapse of the well at 125 feet from 180. So I put in a 12 GPM pump at 122 feet, I think. And I use that strictly to fill up the 900-gallon tank for emergency purposes. In fact, during the Thomas fire, the engines used it because there was a period where we ran out of water on the main line. It's not hooked up to any domestic line. I strictly use it for emergency purposes. I exercise it maybe twice a year. Historically, since I've been here in 1994, most of the time it would provide no water after about April. Only in the best years, such as we've recently had, has it been actually pumping beyond May. And it's like I said, it's a 12 GPM. I only use it for emergency purposes, nothing else. Even my domestic stuff is purely Senior Canyon. What I'm suggesting is that there perhaps may be room for exceptions in the blanket request from all the users for a registered meter. And I specifically am looking at your section 804 of Article 8, which was the state statute that organized you. And it provides language, as you probably know, that you may require metering and you may or may not pay for the metering. And it also states in 804 that the agency may, by ordinance, exempt specific extraction facilities from the measuring requirements. I am asking that you consider wells of my nature and of the use for an exception so that I don't have to meter because it's such an inconsequential amount of water, plus the location. I'm at the head, I'm just below the, where the bridge is that crosses McAndrew next to Thatcher Creek. And it's almost at the edge of your boundary. I'm beyond the San Camintaneo, what was the name of that fault?
San Cayetano.
Yeah, San Catano Fault. So I'm pulling water essentially, I believe, from Sespe, vice below. So I'd ask you to consider all these circumstances and perhaps provide exceptions for certain wells that fall into my category of virtually negligible use. That concludes my briefing. What are your questions?
You have any questions?
I guess I'm dismissed.
Well, I'm going to have a question here, just to show my ignorance. Is this well registered with the county of
Yes,
Ventura?
it's been registered since it was drilled.
Okay. Thank you.
Have you paid the wellhead fees?
Oh, what's a wellhead fee?
It's a fixed charge for,
The only
Anyway.
fees I've ever paid are what you all require me to.
well,
The extraction,
Yeah.
he
Okay.
is up to date on his extraction statements.
yeah.
Okay.
Go-
I thank you for the presentation, and I understand. So,
Yeah,
you know, I
Do
think
I
it's
need
some,
to do anything formally to make everything street legal in terms of action, or do you?
I think you just did.
Yeah.
Which you're requesting. And, you know, letters are blankets. And now we're hearing hearing from people who would like an exception. So, thank you.
yeah, we have a committee that deals with this, and we'll
Get back
definitely,
to me later.
sure.
Well, and
No,
just,
you have a,
Back to
g-
the Pentagon, I understand.
you,
you're right.
no, you have a good point, and I think there's probably some others, so we definitely will take it into
Thank you for your
consideration.
consideration.
and just to add one more thing, since this is not an agendized item, it's in the open session, we can't take any action on anything unless it's on the agenda. And so I'm sure it will come up on the agenda in the future, and we will take action. We just can't take action right now.
Understand, but my question to you is, do I need to do anything beyond what I've already done to have it addressed?
I don't think so.
Now, we've been fairly complete.
We understand the issue, so. Do you have anything?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, the next is Pat Hartman. Is this the same type of?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I also am asking for an exemption for my well. Just a little background on my well, it's located at the corner of Ojai Avenue and Boardman Road. And it's one of the older wells in the valley. It was drilled in 1939. And for many years, it was used by Casitas as a monitoring well. So in March of 2014, to comply with the new OBGMA requirements to pump the well for a minimum of 8 hours per year or have it declared an abandoned well, we pulled the old well casings and had new pipes installed. The well was sealed at that point, and then we dropped a submersible pump in so that we could pump it for those 8 hours. And we do it with a gasoline portable generator. And I faithfully pay the quarterly OBGMA fees, which at present are $480 a year. Other than this required pumping, I do not use the well. We're hooked up to Casitas water, and it's presently not hooked up to any water or irrigation lines, and it does not have an electrical pump, nor is there an electrical hookup at the well corner. And the main reason we're not using our well right now is the prohibitive electrical standby charges of $2,000 per month. You know, that's $24,000 a year for not using my well. That breaks the bank for me. You know, I'm trying to keep the farm sustainable and somewhat profitable for my family members of the Hartman Family Trust, of which I am a surviving trustee. So I think this is an unintended consequence of requiring the meter. I don't think any of you would want to pay $24,000 a year to not use your well. So I'd like to request that exemption, and my reasoning, I too looked at your Senate Bill 539 bylaws, and I believe that my well falls below the minimum amount of groundwater extraction required for the act and the subsequent metering requirements to be applied. So in Article 6 on the Groundwater Management Plan, Section 604C says, the plan shall establish a minimum amount of groundwater extraction below which the requirement of this act will not be applied. So I think zero usage is pretty minimum. I don't know what your minimum is, but. And in Article 6, Section 602F, it repeats the same thing. It's in there twice, that you're supposed to have a minimum amount below which this requirement should not apply. And I also, noted Article 8, Section 804, which says the agency may, by ordinance, exempt specific extraction facilities from the measuring device requirements. So you're allowed to do that. I was also interested in Article 3, Section 307, which talks about conjunctive use. And it says conjunctive use means the coordinated operation of groundwater and surface water supplies. And the idea is that that we'd use more surface water when the groundwater basin is lower. And I'm voluntarily not taking any water from the basin, which helps the groundwater levels. So I think that qualifies as a conjunctive use. You don't have to enforce it. I'm doing it voluntarily. Okay, and so secondly, hooking up to electricity and metering my well would create a huge financial hardship for me, which I mentioned, the electrical standby charges. And also, during the past 2 years, my well has artesian 24/7 for 5 months. So I don't know if you put a meter on that, you have to pay for that kind of water. You can't stop from coming out of your well. So that's something else to consider. And, I want to keep the well because it is an asset for the property. Plus, to destroy a well costs around $20,000. So everything is monetarily very expensive. And, I understand your intent is to protect and monitor the basin, which is important, and of course I'm in agreement with that. But people like me who are not using their wells are helping sustain the basin by not pumping water out. So it would be nice if you could make it easier for landowners to not use their well, and that would be kind of a win-win, I think, for both of us. And I'm sure you know that if the loss of citrus orchards in the Ojai Valley would attract less rainfall and make the valley much more arid, which would hurt the basin even more. So, if these kind of prohibitive fees keep piling up, I'm going to lose my orchard. And I already lost quite a bit of it with the rains in 2023 with the flood. The San Antonio Creek took a big S-curve into my property and took away an acre of our land and 68 of my pixie tangerine trees. So I've had to pay to, first of all, it took a year to get the permits, and then I had to pay to get some rock revetment back in and some dirt. We had over 150 dump truck loads of dirt brought in, and that's all out-of-pocket expenses for me as well. So I hope you will consider this in another meeting. And I guess my other question is, what about the January 30th deadline then? That's your next meeting. And, I obviously can't afford $1,000 a day fines for not putting a meter in, but I really don't have a way to put a meter in. So do you have any suggestions or questions about that?
As far as a deadline, yeah, you've
Yeah.
taken the first step, you talked to us. That's really was the intent of the letter, is to get people to let us know what their situation is, and now that we're learning what some of them are, we can take some action on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we get the speaker's name? Sorry, I didn't. If
Pardon me?
Speaker's name is what Peter's.
Oh,
Yeah.
Up to the mic,
It's-
so we
No,
can't hear without the
he had read
mics.
it.
My name is Pat Hartman, and I'm at 207 Boardman Road.
I don't know if it's on or not, Pat.
What?
Is the microphone on?
I think it was.
Okay.
yeah, it's,
All right, thank you.
This is your well in question.
Yeah.
We've all seen this one, flow artesian.
That's it.
Yeah.
I have people stop me all the time saying I'm wasting water.
This is a well that, you know, it's kind of famous. We've
So-
done a lot of presentations.
So question to Jordan. Could, if you capped that flow, do you damage a well?
Now,
I-
potentially, one could damage a well if it were capped, if the well did not have a proper, competent casing or seal.
Okay.
You could still have some of that pressure build up and then further corrode or crack a casing or seal and still seep out the sides. You know, this is a unique well. It's famous. We love it. It's kind of I suffice to say, a sentinel of the health of the basin. You know, when your well starts flowing artesian, it's one of the first we all see, and we think, great, the basin's filling up again, or at least that aquifer.
Yeah. In
Which
fact, we had to loosen some bolts because it was starting to crack the cement there because there was so much pressure.
And that's exactly to Mr. Finch's point, is
Right.
that, you know, if you try to cap a well like that, it's, you know, it's definitely has a potential unintended negative consequence.
And the water does just go back into the basin because we funnel it into the ditch on Ojai Avenue, and then it goes back into the river.
Yes,
There.
it flows out of your well into the ditch along along the 150 and then into San Antonio Creek.
That's right.
That's over what we call the perch system now. So you're taking water from an intermediate depth, because your well does not go that deep.
It's 200 feet.
Yeah, relatively shallow. And that particular aquifer is one that tends to flow artesian longest. In fact, the depth discrete monitoring well that we have on South Fulton Street here has a casing that is correlative to the aquifer penetrated by your well. And that's one of the last wells to flow artesian, even after your well has a water level that has gone down a little bit. So it's a very valuable source of information. And you only use this well to comply with keeping it active.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, I mean, this could be, the agency can speak about this, and there'll be some conversation, I'm sure, but it does sound like it would be a candidate for either conversion to a monitoring point on a permanent basis, or applying for a certificate of exemption from the county. So that's something that I think this would be a good candidate for, but we'll get there.
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is is it Bauer?
Yes.
Yeah, Dwayne Bauer.
Okay, Dwayne Bauer here, we're 970 Boardman Road. And it really goes back a long ways, probably 30 years, when the state was kind of asking a bunch of questions about what are we gonna do about our water wells, our local ones. And there was a couple of us local guys that put this together so we could kind of keep the money down, and without the state coming in and renting a building and a pickup and a hired person and retirement and everything. So we put this together for this reason, because, I mean, really, you can have, it used to be back in the 50s, you could make a living, an annual living on 40 or 50 acres or something. But nowadays, it's lucky to pay for the electric bill for your well, and you work in town or another way. So it's just something that we're all talking about here. It takes a lot of money to keep these things going and to keep Ojai rural and to keep Ojai very unique like it is. I mean, a lot of us has been here for many, many years, family years and everything too. So we really want to keep everything reasonable and logical. So that's really what we're talking about today too. So if you guys really work that in as we go along here, we'll work with you too. So, okay, any questions or whatever?
Dwayne, I would say keeping it logical and in ag, unfortunately, it's been taken out of our hands. And that is where all the various costs on everything that we're doing is coming from. It's, if it was just in our hands, you could take a digit
Yeah.
or 2 digits
I agree.
off of this thing. Unfortunately, with what is happening, we lost that true local control. We're trying to maintain as much as we can, but,
I understand that too.
but I fully
we're trying
agree.
to
Fully agree with
for that.
everything you said.
Because we can react to that too. And we still have a country that we can talk to and tell them really what we're doing and what we want. So,
Debatable.
got it. Keep trying. Okay, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments on items not on today's agenda? Anyone online? Okay, thank you. Next item is the consent agenda, finance report for October and minutes of October 24th meeting. Any questions? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Call the roll.
Director Daddy,
Yes.
Director Finch,
Yes.
Director Thilke,
Yes.
Chair Hages.
Yes. Item 8, action items, well verification for 3622 Reeves Road. Julia.
Yes, so we got this application in September, and the applicant provided their deposit for the analysis that needs to be done per the groundwater sustainability plan. Dudek and Kier Groundwater both looked at the application and the potential impacts. They were requesting 100 acre-feet per year for their farm out on the east end, and we had a couple discussions about it because of its proximity to Thatcher Creek and potential for that upper aquifer to be impacted, and what do they call them? The habitat, I can't think of the acronym.
Groundwater-dependent ecosystems.
That's it, the groundwater-dependent ecosystems that were previously mapped. So we put together some conditions for the applicant that are in the well verification letter, which includes, I should just go right to the letter and read them. It's one of the attachments, probably the last attachment. You can see, it's kind of one of the last few pages in your packet there. Page 2 of the letter lists the general conditions for the well. The one that's in bold is that we want to get some information while they're drilling that well, which includes having notification that they're gonna be drilling so that Jordan can be out there to observe and get the log from them and consider the upper 100 feet having a seal so that it's not penetrating that SWIZY zone. I thought of, after I drafted this letter up, that since we're requiring that and it's going to take Jordan's time, that the applicant should really fund Jordan's time, that shouldn't come out of OBGMA's pocket. So I would like to add another condition that be included in the letter for the applicant to provide a deposit. Jordan will give me an estimate. I think he, off the cuff, told me maybe $1,500 of time, and include that as one of the conditions. So what I'm looking for is the recommendation. You can see the 3 bullets there on the memo that have to do with the groundwater sustainability plan criteria, and then adopt the resolution authorizing the written verification with that additional condition that I just discussed.
How much have they paid so far?
They provided initial $5,000 deposit and then another $3,000, so it's been $8,000. And that's been to cover Dudek's time, Jordan's time, Peter's time, and my time. It's not insignificant, I understand that.
How deep do they think they're gonna put this thing?
I think they're
700 feet?
Isn't that unusually deep for that area?
Yeah, just down the road, we hit brackish water when, what's his name?
Parrot, yeah.
No, not Parrot. Hunsinger hit
Oh.
it. He wasn't 700, and then 700 at the golf course.
Well, I think the,
And as a matter of fact, Golden State hit
Golden
it
State
too.
hit it, yeah.
Yeah, and so I would be really nervous because Golden State pumped that water out, and they had to have that thing, what, for 2 years, have that thing evaporate. That
Yeah,
big
oh, yeah.
pond they put in, and so that was a giant mess. And so, well, I don't know if we have anything to say about 700 feet, but I certainly am not up for 700.
Well, it's their dime.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a risk they're taking.
Yeah.
It's their dime.
any other questions? You have a motion to approve Julia's recommendations.
So moved with amendment.
I second it.
Call the roll.
Chair Daddy? I'm sorry, Director Daddy?
Thank you. No, I didn't.
I'm sorry. Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Thielke?
Yes.
Chair Hages?
Yes. Okay, next is item 9, discussion items, legislative ad hoc committee. Do we have anything on that?
We did not meet.
And the meter compliance ad hoc committee looks like they're gonna have to do some work.
Agreed. I suggest that we look for a time, maybe the second week in January. The holidays are coming up. I'm gonna be gone the 2 weeks. So maybe the second week in January, we put a committee meeting together. I also want to mention that we did send out that first letter. The second notice is going out tomorrow. Cece's got the box of them over there. The speakers who were here today, they're all on the list to get that second notice, so that will be in their mailbox, as well as the email that we had earlier.
Well, can't we note?
Why don't we just put a hand note
Yeah,
on
on
those
these.
three?
Little
that
sticky note
Yeah.
on there? Okay.
We understand, but,
Under advisement?
yeah, no, just acknowledge that they
Yeah,
were
yeah.
here.
Good idea.
What was
Or pull theirs, one of the two,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would say.
Whatever
I think-
direction you guys agree on.
I just,
Let's pull them,
let's pull it. Save the stamp.
Right now.
those.
It's not just a stamp, it's certified.
We're sending them certified as well, certified.
So,
Yeah,
let me ask a question. This response, and I saw that, what kind of have we had any positive, getting it done type
We
things?
have had a couple meters installed, and they provided their, we had 3.
all
We
right.
got 3 meter registration forms and their photos of their meters and all of that.
Oh, good.
Had another inquiry saying, does it matter what kind of meter we install? And so I just responded back. So
And it was
we
what,
are
about
getting
40 letters?
43?
So the combination of those plus this,
Yeah, it was
It's-
good
it's-
result.
We're getting response.
12, 14%, something?
Yeah. Yeah, I would suggest pull these. What, you said you had an email or from someone?
Yeah, there was an email from Peter Strauss about his well that,
Oh, it's the same thing. It's, he
Same
doesn't
thing.
use it?
yeah.
Okay. Well, you might recontact him and tell him we're considering
Okay.
their
I can reach out
concerns.
to him with another email.
Okay. Okay.
A question, Chair, before we go too much further. So are we going to develop some type of another form where they put in certain parameters and we can look? If we have people that are only pumping because it's required
Yeah.
for 8 hours a day or 8 hours a year, I'd kind of like to have something where we can say,
Yeah.
they are going to be different, but we're going to maybe find 10 or 15 people that follow into a 2 or
Yeah.
3 categories
Yeah.
where we can kind of take a individual look instead of a wide
Yeah,
paintbrush.
Julie and I talked about it before the meeting, and I think there's some simple solutions to it.
Okay.
Having them come forward was the goal, so I think we're doing all right from that standpoint.
And, I think as I'm not sure if Peter mentioned it, but there is, right now, I know they mentioned enabling legislation and things like that that allow for exemptions, but OBGMA passed subsequent ordinances that do not allow
Right.
exemptions. So if we do want to allow exemptions, we have to go back and pass
Yeah.
another ordinance
Yeah.
of some kind.
We'll just amend that one.
Let's see how many people it affects
Yeah.
and how
Let's-
big the issue is.
Now that we're starting to understand, we have to
Right.
cast the
Yes,
net, now we're starting
exactly.
to understand, so.
There's, excuse me, but there's one person that was going to be out of the country, and he's up, I think on not Montgomery, but Daly, and he has a hand-dug well. He couldn't be here, yes.
Hand dug, I'm impressed.
Really old, similar, but he's out of the country, so he couldn't be here.
Can you imagine digging a?
I had a hand dug well in San Luis
But that's a
Not-
different.
Not up here.
Well, depends where your water, if your water's at 40 feet in the rock.
Yeah, there'd be a lot of rocks, big pile of rocks.
Okay, didn't mean to cause all that trouble.
I'm sure we can find an exemption for that.
There is a certificate of exemption processed by the county,
I-
and that's probably the first place to go.
Exactly.
Rather than have the agency take on the expense and brain drama of having an independent certificate of exemption, they can go to the county and officially have a certificate of exemption.
Yeah.
And that way
Provide that to us.
hey, it's $20,000 to destroy it, or pay the $1,200 for a 5-year certificate of exemption.
You see, that's the part that, now, can we talk about this, or? we-
Not really, but,
So let's,
well, you and I can talk about it, but
We'll schedule a
I think
meeting
it
for
was-
the compliance.
there's
what do we
simple
call it?
solutions to it,
ad
I
hoc
think.
committee. And if you'd like, I can invite Jordan to give us his feedback on that committee meeting.
Happy to participate.
Anything else? Then we're adjourned at 3:59.
Wait,